Oh, there he is. Boom. Man, that line just jumped on the fall. That feels so good. And with braid, all you gotta do is just kind of reel back into them with a good sharp treble hook, and you got them hooked. Feels like a nice quality fish right now. Water temps are 48 degrees, classic fall pattern. Look at that brownie coming up. And I'm gonna actually grab the net on this, guys, folks. It's a lot more convenient when you're dealing with, you know, fall conditions, just to put them in the net. Go easy on the fish, go easy on your hands. Pretty guy, huh? Beautiful. Look at that spoon riding the line up. And look at that. I'll kind of turn my body a little bit to the camera. Perfect. That's the presentation, a spoon. And here's the other presentation, a treble hook. And if you look at it there, you'll know what I mean. I got a little spinner on a swivel. And I got a nice smallmouth hooked right there. No damage to the fish. I'll make a quick release with him. There you go, buddy. So guys, it's late fall right now and we're targeting smallmouth bass. It's cold water. We're in the high 40s right now, and with the weather we're gonna have next week, we're gonna be pushing into the low 40s and then in the high 30s. So it's a late fall pattern setting up almost in winter. And for smallmouth bass, that means these fish tend to really congregate heavily on specific spots. So it oftentimes becomes a real spot on the spot type deal, and it's a structure deal in the case of this particular spot. And if you take a look at my cartography, you'll see we're spot locked on leading edge of an offshore hump that has a nice shelf, and it also has some steep contours that drop off into deeper water. And when it comes to wintering holes, it's really about finding where the fish winter, and it takes a lot of time on the water to do that. So we're on a known spot right now, but basically I'm looking for deeper water areas or structures that have good access to deeper water that may have a deeper water shelf, say 20 feet, you know, 20 to 30 feet that drop off into deeper water. And you want to find those spots with presentations like blade baits and spoons. And when you do find them, you can go back repeatedly, you know, over the years at the same time and catch those fish. And it's a real precise deal. So you want to fish baits that allow you to get your bait down to where those fish live, as well as systematically, you know, cover some water. So today we're out here and we're spoon fishing. It's a good time of year for blade baits, good time of year for spoons, basically metal. It's really fun to fish metal this time of year. Fish are really receptive to it, and it gives you precise depth control for these fish. So water temp, you know, real critical up here, 47 degrees, late fall. That's gonna dictate the types of baits I'm gonna have on the deck. So I caught that fish, I've made a few casts, and I haven't gotten bit on the last few casts. So we're spot locked on this spot, and what I'll do is I'll make use of the entire boat. This boat's almost 21 feet long, and the fish can shift position on these wintering holes a little bit. So I wanna still be able to cover some water, change my casting angle. So I was making that cast. Now I'll walk to the back of the boat, I'll fish some other areas behind the boat. And when I get bit, the big thing I want to do is make a line up with the shore and then make that same cast again, because the school will shift on these spots. And depending on the wind angle, when I'm fishing by myself a lot, I'm fishing in the back of the boat quite a bit just to keep the boat off the spot. One thing with the amount of pressure that fish get these days because of the electronics and angler knowledge is it seems like you can video game them with a lot less frequency than you used to be able to. I mean, back in the day when drop shotting was coming on, electronics were getting better, you could get on the top of these fish and catch them. Seems like they're a lot smarter. I mean, this lake's been, you know, derby fish all summer. A lot of tournaments out here. These fish have seen a lot of different baits. So it seems that they tend to get a little bit boat or maybe even electronic shy. So I prefer keeping the boat off the fish when I can and making casts to where I think the fish are. And whenever I'm dealing with wind conditions, I'd rather make casts parallel to the wind, so directly downwind or upwind rather than perpendicular, to minimize the bow in the line. You can see how I'm tighter on that presentation. casting downwind or making quarter casts against the wind instead of casting across the wind and getting big bows in the line. The beauty of a metal bait is they tend to sink quickly, and then they talk to you when they hit bottom. You know, your line goes slack, and I can see that real easily today with this bright high-vis braided line. So when I hit bottom, I get that bow in the line, that's slack, and then I'll engage that bait with 2-foot lift and fall. Drop it on semi-slack, pop it up a couple feet, experiment with how high I lift that bait, and then let it fall on semi-slack. And that braid does a pretty good job of translating a bite on the fall to your hand. You know, at which point I just kind of reel down on them and give them a light, almost a reel set. They don't have to set the hook too hard with braid being no stretch. This is 10-pound braid, suffix 832 to a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. I like going a little bit beefier with a spoon or a blade bait just because they can have a tendency to come back onto the line. So just a little bit bigger diameter, stronger pound test seems to be a good thing from a durability standpoint. Whereas if I was drop shotting, I'd probably be fishing 8-pound fluoro. And then smallmouth being sight feeders, yeah, just a nice shank, probably 7-8 feet of clear fluorocarbon for better invisibility to the presentation, as well as a little bit of stretch on the business end. Anytime you're dealing with treble hooks, you run the risk of pulling them out with a braided main line just because of lack of stretch. So fluorocarbon gives you a decent stretch factor on the end there too. And then rod and reel for blade baits, spoons. I just like a medium power rod. I'll even go to a medium light. I want a soft tip, similar to crankbait fishing or topwater fishing. Again, I don't want to tear those treble hooks out, especially when I'm fishing a braid like this. So medium power, medium light, something that 7-foot range, 7'6", coupled with just a good spinning reel that you probably already have in your inventory. This happens to be a Daiwa Fuego LT 2500, and then a Savage Gear browser rod, medium power, 7-foot. Ooh, there's one right there. Just made a little mini move on this spot. Small moves, man. If you stop getting bit, you fan cast an area, make sure to fan cast, and then when you stop getting bit, just make a mini move like I just did. I'm gonna take this to the back of the boat with the net, so Keys isn't looking at pitch black. The beauty of spinning gear, I mean, I could fish this on casting gear, and I sometimes will with heavy spoons, but spinning gear definitely is more efficient. Big part of it's that right there, drag. It just gives you a better drag system for light line applications. Nice. This rubber net is kind of my preferred for bass, and I cater my net to the hoop size, basically to the size of the fish. Look at that. Got a perfect hook right there in the mouth, a little pinprick with that hybrid treble, and a nice bass like that. But the deal with that rubber is you're not taking any slime off the fish and your hooks aren't getting into it. And I don't like a giant net in a bass boat, so I'm kind of reducing the footprint of the net. Pretty fish, huh? We'll let you go, buddy. Cold water too, I mean, those fish release really healthy. A lot of oxygen in the water this time of year. Just a nice clean process. So the bait I'm using today, this is a Savage Gear line-thru baitfish spoon, and it's exactly what it says. It's line-thru, so you run your line through the spoon, you attach a treble at the end of your choosing, and then I actually got a little bobber stop up here as well. And this bait, for me, fits a unique void in that it's pretty narrow. It's got a nice weight to it. I think this one's 3/8 ounce, but it sinks quickly, but it's still wide enough where I get a decent flutter. Now, a traditional flutter spoon like this River to Sea, that's a great bait in a lot of situations, but I'm fishing deeper today, so I want something that cuts through the water quicker and gives me more direct contact with that bait on the fall, and I'm just making short hops with it. So this, to me, is a better match for the conditions, and it's a little bit smaller profile. I'm targeting smallmouth bass. I got smaller mouths. I'm not looking for a giant bait. So the big component of this is what you put on the business end. So treble hooks, there's a lot of different ones on the market now, and a treble hook can be a lure, you know, onto itself, and that's the case with this one here. This is a VMC bladed hybrid treble, so it's got a little willow leaf on the end with the swivel. And what's cool about a line-thru is you can get some separation of that spoon from the treble hook on the fall. But because I have a little bit of spinner, you know, I have spinner on here, I have some flash, that treble hook is a target itself. So even if the treble hook's tight on the bait as that bait's fluttering, you want the fish to come up and target on that treble hook so you get better hooks. So I just feel more confident with a little bit of attraction on that treble hook that I'm gonna get better hookup ratios. There's a couple other trebles that will work well too. You could go with a glow or a resin one here. So that's another one by VMC, and they have a bunch of different colors. But again, just some color. In the case of the blade, I actually got some, maybe a little bit of vibration, but more so just some flicker, some flash. And on this spot, we got a bunch of baitfish. So that's a confidence deal for me. It's also a strong hook and real sticky one. You could use a standard treble here. This is a really cool one by Savage Gear that actually has a heavy braid instead of a split ring, and these are real popular just to reduce, you know, torque that a fish has when twisting. Better than a split ring, but that's more needed when you're fishing hard baits. I keep a few in the boat at all times to throw on different hard baits, but when you're fishing a line-thru, you don't need a split ring, you don't need a braided, you know, treble hook here, because your line can spin infinite without getting, you know, without torquing or tearing that fish off. So you really reduce the leverage with this style of bait over one with split rings, you know, and you also reduce line twist because that bait can spin like that without twisting your line. And that's an issue you have with jigging baits, spoons, blade baits, is you can get a lot of line twist. I don't have line twist with this, so excellent from a line management standpoint and excellent from a fish leverage standpoint. They're just not tearing out near as much with that, but I'm getting all the action I want out of that bait. Staying down deep, I'm getting flutter and flash, and the underwater show it. And a trick you can do if you feel like you're getting a lot of separation from that bait and the treble hook is just to put a bobber stop on there. Texas rigging, some people like to peg. You can peg. Some people like to play with having some play between your presentation with the Texas rig and the hook. I'm doing the same thing here with the spoon, and I'm just exploring that today. So I got myself a good 6-8 inches there where that spoon could separate. I have a little bead there for attraction and knot protection to that bladed hybrid treble, and that's just a sweet setup. You're not going to lose too many fish on this setup once you get them hooked. And then look at the finish on this particular bait. This is a baitfish pattern that we're fishing now, but we're fishing smallmouth bass that are eating baitfish. This isn't crayfish this time of year right now. Crayfish are kind of under rocks getting ready to hibernate, so we're fishing baits that look like forage, and that does a terrific job. A spoon that I use religiously is a good old-fashioned crippled herring, Lure Jensen. You know, this is a heavier spoon. It has less wobble on the fall. So if I'm fishing fish that are real pinpoint to the bottom and I don't want a lot of lateral movement, I'll go this route. But today I feel more confident having one with a little bit of flash and a little bit more motion. So to me, this is a good hybrid. Gets down to the bottom, stays down there relatively well. Love the line-thru option. I think I get better hooking percentages with it, but it has a little bit more wobble on the fall. Ooh, there he is, first cast. Not first cast since I was talking about the baits I was using, and boom. I fired that one up a little shallower on this spot, and that's one thing, you get these real nice fall days, definitely shift up shallower on the structures, and that's why I like fishing a structure that gives you some different stair steps, you know, so you can shift up shallow. Heck, they might be on a jerkbait bite today, but they're definitely eating a spoon. We can see that spoon, you see how it separates from that hook? That's reducing lost fish. I'm getting less lost fish with that setup. Look at that. And for me, this is kind of the proof. When you start seeing that, like that treble hook is in their mouth, the treble hook kind of becomes a lure too onto itself when you add a little bit of attraction to it. And we got some awesome underwaters of that bladed hybrid treble, and that does add quite a bit of attraction to a presentation, whether it's a topwater or a crankbait or a spoon, horizontal jigging bait like a jigging wrap. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to really fish these baits. There I was just kind of jerking it sideways and up a little bit, but I know I'm getting good flash and flutter on the business end underwater. So for me, a good stroke of the rod, which is probably about 2 feet, 24 inches, just enough to engage that bait and get some of that going down there, that's perfect. I'd be fighting it with a drop shot today, you know, in the wind. I don't like messing with that in the fall as much. I like to put on some warm weather clothing, some gloves, so I'm comfortable, and then get after it with metal. It's just more efficient, and you really can't beat it. I don't know what it is about metal in the fall, late fall, water temps in the 40s, but if you get it around smallmouth bass, they will eat it. And when I go search new winter holes, I put on a heavy spoon so I can cover water quickly. And I'm confident that if I get it around smallmouth, I'm gonna get some bites. That's how I find these new spots, is with these baits. Look at that sow, man. It's a beauty. Pretty like that. Beautiful light. And you're not hurting these fish going into the winter months with multiple hooks. I just like that single hook application. He came off right in the net. That's a nice fish. Sweet fish. So stock up on some blade baits, stock up on some spoons. You know, they do different things, but man, I love a spoon with a single hook. So get out in the fall. Guys are out hunting right now. Kids are back to school. There's a lot less pressure on these fish. And I think you encounter a lot of fish that haven't been caught in the summertime, as they can spread out across these lakes. And now they're stacked up like cordwood on real specific spots. Get on your electronics, scan, side image, and then go fish through areas with fast and efficient baits like metal spoons. And you get them around fish, you're gonna get bit, and you're gonna have some awesome spots that'll produce for years to come.